Hello, 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 and we are live here with the SEO Mastery Summit, day number 5. Have you had enough? Obviously not. There's still 2 more days to go, and today is the Q&A session, live Q&A session here, and we have lots of questions to share. First of all, welcome to Tommy Butler, who have joined me here today.
Welcome, good morning, Matt. Nice to hear you and see you. And I'm looking forward to catching up for a drink with you when everything goes back to some kind of normality.
Excellent. I hope people can understand you well. I know Craig sometimes need multiple translators, but I hope I think your English is a little bit more understandable, but we'll see.
A wee bit better than Craig's. I'll be polite, yeah. It's, we need to speak a wee bit slower. Because sometimes we do have the translation going along the bottom of the screen, which is quite interesting. Yeah, cool.
Right, Tommy. Would you mind just giving us a brief overview of what your talk today have been all about, and so on? So if people haven't watched it yet, if they missed out big time, they know exactly why they should go back and watch it.
Yeah, well, I'm into hyperdomains. I like being hyper local. I like town names. I like city location names because they give you an advantage of population, and therefore with the population you have the hyper local connection there, and therefore aiming at that market I think is it's absolutely better for a business point of view. And at the same time you can take that concept and actually be anywhere in the world and sort of grow a business at a hyper local action and a hyper local way, but you can be sitting in the room like this and run hyper local online businesses any part in the world. And that's what part of my talk will be about today with regards to what we have done with Glasgow. With Glasgow, we have 80 websites for Glasgow at the moment. The main site's getting revamped at the moment. There's a clock on it for it to counting down, and we went and walk to the streets of Glasgow to get it to that hyper local level, and that is one of the things that I was talking about. But also we actually go and visit places that we're interested in, and then we'll come back and buy the domain name because we've got the photographs, we've got they write the content, and we know a lot about it. And to me, that is the way forward of building an online digital business. So that's basically what we've been talking about.
Yeah, and I know when you take a cheap holiday down south and then you come home spending thousands and thousands of dollars on domains. So, you probably have even more domain names than most of us, even though I think most SEOs are pretty well equipped when it comes to domain names, or at least most of the people I know have their fair share. But
I've got about 400 domains at the moment. I used to have at one time 5,000 and sold them off over the years, but I'm down to about 400, which I think is manageable. But I don't want to go above 500. I think that's different scale altogether.
So I talked with my friend Callan here on the live the other day, and they have a few more, so they have about 60,000 at the moment. So they're definitely up there, but they're also obviously selling them and so on. So that's a different business model for sure.
That's a big business model, but that's a lot of renewals as well.
It's a lot of renewals.
When you look at it at that scale, and that's I totally get that, because I know some domainers that are sitting there with 100,000 domains, 200,000 domains, etc. And you cannot imagine that size of portfolio. I can't, my brain would just snap trying to figure out what to do with them. But there's a fantastic model with regards to parking the domains and then earning a revenue from them. So I totally get it in flipping flipping domains. So there's a market, a total massive market for that. I personally like to take a domain name from scratch and build it and watch it grow organically. And then, then hopefully that brings in sales, or that brings on advertisers. And that means that to me is the end goal of using the domain name, and also building up this, turning each domain name with its own social aspects as well. So that is time consuming, boring and tedious. But in today's world, you've got to do that. sort of thing. But once you've done it, that's the hard part out the road. So to me, you treat every domain name as the same, because it is amazing that some domain names that you think, you go, okay, I've bought it, it's not a great name, but I've bought it, sometimes turn out to be fantastic earners. And
Yeah,
that's,
or you know, the right person want to pay a healthy chunk of change for it, right?
yeah, exactly. I mean, if there was Joseph, one of the domainers from Turkey, he sold a couple of months ago cognitiveautomation.com. Right now, think about it. But he had studied that market, and he sold that. He registered domain name 4 years ago, and sold it for $350,000 plus. I think he got shares in the company. Now, that's been very clever and very smart. But that kind of domain name in the domain world is not seen as a free letter type kind of domain. It doesn't have that kind of value. But studying the market, looking at the domain, it's one of these ones where if you do your market research like everything else, then you will find the market for it. I registered free domain names about 2 months ago, right, for a market that is very specialized and very niche. And I'll tell you about it because I own the names. I was talking at I went and bought superyachtdealer.com, okay, because I've got helicopterhires.com, I've got corporatejethire.com, and I bought yachthires.com, okay. So I bought a drop auction, Super Yacht Dealer, because that's the super yachts, and those are really expensive to rent out. So I was talking to a chap who's in that industry, and he was telling us that basically the submarines that go on the side of the super yachts, they are now, and it's a German company, they now lease out the submarines to so you can hire the mini submersibles. And I went, oh, that's interesting. I says, so I done a search, right? And I now own submarinecharter.com, okay, submarinehire.com, and I registered a domain name that had never been registered before, submarinesale.com. Right now, the chances of the chartered and the higher ones, yeah, I get it. I can, for holiday hotspots that are doing the submersibles, there's a market there for it. The submarine sale one is very niche market, but there is a market for it. And therefore, by buying that name, that's what I'm talking about, very, very niche markets. Whereupon just that one sale alone, a year or even every 2 years, it would work very well. But if I'm a submarine manufacturer, that's the sort of name that I bought. And then I went and bought, I noticed a trend that was getting traffic as in the niche market was uboatsubmarine.com. So I ended up buying that. Why? Because it brings in traffic. And then
right, so that's what I think is very interesting about your domain strategy from an SEO point of view, right? Because we love traffic, or at least our sites love traffic, and many of the names that you actually manage to register, many of them I've actually seen, they get a bunch of traffic, even just on the name, right? Yeah. So even before you put content on them or anything, they actually get traffic, right? So what's your strategy? How do you try and figure out if a domain will get traffic on its own before you buy it? Is that something you look at? And if so, how do you do that?
Well, first thing that I do, if I look at a domain name, I'll go into archive.org to check if the history of the domain name, see what it's been in the past, go through every archive on it. Also do a search on the search engines to get the history. So that's what I do first. I'll then go into whois.sc and run a check on the name to see when it's been dropped, how many times it's been dropped, and who's, so you're doing your research on the name to see who's had it in the past, see where it's been used, and then I'll look at it and I'll look at the domain name, and if it's part of my strategy, because I only buy names that are part of my strategy. If it's no part of my strategy, I'm not interested. So I'll look at it and go, knowing that I've already got it, I'll go, that name will bring in more traffic that specialise on that sort of field, and that's what I look at. And sure enough, you put the site up, and within a couple of weeks you start getting that organic type in traffic, And what you've got to look at is that it's pure organic, natural traffic. No spending money on Facebook ads, no spending money on Google ads, building the site. And then if that gets really good traffic, you then go like that. If it's a geographic or a keyword thing, you then look at it and go, okay, that's doing well. Let's go and do the next one. So you look at the other name that's a part of that business and do the exact same thing and replicate it.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I like asking people is that I'll turn around and say to them, how's your website doing? And they'll turn around and say, oh, it's doing really good. And I'll go, right, so what do you compare it to? But they haven't got anything to compare it because they've only all got one website. So I say if you've got 2 websites or 3 websites or a couple of websites, at least you can compare the analytics and see which one's doing good. And to me, when I sit there with the data, I've got the data for all my websites, or the Glasgow ones for the last 16 years. I can see the peaks and the troughs, and you get to understand people's habits, looking at the IP numbers, jumping for different sites, etc. But it's sort of do with, I like hyper-local traffic. That's what I'm aiming at, sort of thing. And also like buying names that industries should have, but they don't have. And I think that is the market that I love. As you know, Nomads, I've got about 100 hotel sites, and I find it amazing that I can pick up hotel location names that have been dropped for $10 or $50, depending on, or $200, depending on what option you go to. And you sit there and look at it, and you look at that name and go, right, 2 million people visit this location a year, and there's maybe 10 hotels, and not one of the hotels own the name. But what are the people searching for? The people aren't searching for the brand of the hotel. The people are searching for the location that they're going to, and the word hotel, holiday, accommodation, and travel. So to me, it's a lot of hoteliers need to understand it's not the brand doesn't matter online. It's the geographical area. It's the word hotel. I'll give an example of how my brain works. Right, we were going down to a place in a couple of years back called Beamish. Right, it's a museum, like Victorian Museum or the thingies. And as we were driving down, it's down by Newcastle. We stopped overnight at a wee place called Washington, right? And we pops into Washington, and there's 6 hotels right next to the motorway. And I'm sitting, I goes like that to Trisha. I says, 25 million, 30 million, 40 million, 50 million for each one of the hotels right next to the motorway. I wonder who owns Motorway Hotel. Do you know it was available for registration? Now, think about that, right? That the domain name, motorwayhotel.co.uk, motorwayhotel.com, I own them. I picked them up for hand registration. I should never have been able to get them. Yet these hotels spend 20 million, 30 million building hotels on just one motorway. And the traffic is the people in the motorway that are looking for a hotel for maybe a stopover, but they've never thought of registering the name that is part of what the people are looking for.
Yeah.
And that's the way my brain works. Simple things like that. Driving along, picking up and looking at names and going, oh, I wonder who owns that. And sometimes you can get them. You can be lucky enough to pick them up.
Yeah, it's lots of opportunities out there, that's for sure. And I love the game because I mean, most SEOs are sort of focused on all the keywords and all this good stuff, and you have a very different approach to the whole game of getting traffic and so on, right? And you've been very, very successful doing this for many years. So it's definitely very interesting to get inspiration to how other ways of looking at it can work, right?
Well, here's something that we've done, and this maybe be interesting. It's boring, right? But before the pandemic, I went round and took photographs of all the businesses in Glasgow, all the shops, all the thingies, right? And 2 years ago, I stuck them on Google Images, and I've done it as an experiment, Mads, to find out how well each one of those images would do. And as you know, Google then sends you the data of how many people have viewed each one of the images. Now, next month, I should be at, according to Google, 45 million people have viewed the 1,600 images I took of the local businesses in the city centre. within 2 years, right? Now, I didn't make any money from it, but what I did get back from Google was the stats for every single one of those businesses, how many people had viewed them. And that was really interesting to get that kind of data, because now I can now optimize that data when I then do the next batch and get a percentage of that traffic coming to the sites that we're developing for Glasgow. So sometimes you've got to do stuff outside the box to get the return back and collecting the data. And that's that, you know, you don't get paid for it, but it was a worthwhile experiment doing it.
Oh, but there could definitely be ways of doing that as well, right? I mean, did they just see them through Google Images, or where did they pick up the pictures?
Pick them up from Google Images. Just, I'm a Google local guide for Glasgow at level 8. So we posted on there. And the more that I used it, the more I realised that there is an opportunity to use that to increase our own traffic to our Glasgow network, sort of thing. And I find that it's like everything else. It's like if you can build something and get all that organic, natural traffic, that's what it's about. It's like, you know, what we've done with LinkedIn. As you know, Mads, I've got a company page for each one of my domains. And I've done that way back, but it took a long time to do. But getting that linkage from LinkedIn and also doing the same in Twitter, I think we've got about 400 Twitter accounts, all for each one of the domain names that we've got. And each one of them has traffic or visitors that are thingied for each one of those areas. So it's right down to the hyper-local network. And that's the kind of traffic that I like. I like creating it, starting it from scratch and building it up. So if you look at the map behind me, Glasgow, right? We've got the name, we've got 80 sites for Glasgow, we're in the LinkedIn group for Glasgow, and on the Twitter account at Glasgow. So, and that's got 18,500 followers on Twitter, which I could improve it. If I go beside that, rowaneastgilbride.com, we're on the Twitter account, we've got the LinkedIn page, same for Cumbernauld, Largs, Greenock, Helensburgh, and one or two others. And that's my Scottish Town network, that are part of the Greater Glasgow network. So everything's in layers and everything that interconnects, sort of thing. And
you get a whole ton of like links between them, right? So when you own all these different domains and you're interlinking between all the sites, right? Obviously you get a lot of value from that as well, because all your sites have decent traffic, right? And even without a lot of links, when Google see all the traffic and then they interlink to each other and so on, that's that brings a lot of value.
Because what you've got to look at is you've got to look at who is the customer, right? And that's what I do. And I imagine myself being a customer on my network, if you take our Glasgow network as an example. And the cross linkage with regards to it. So if you're a retailer in Glasgow, we have 6 shopping sites for Glasgow alone, and they all interconnect. So if you take, let's say, glasgowshop.co.uk that we're working on at the moment, and you take, say, Buchanan Street in Glasgow, we have listed every business in Buchanan Street, right? So we've taken the photographs, we've created the page. We are now at the stage of, we would have had it ready, but because of COVID, was taking the photographs inside the premises and getting the retailers to basically have their online store, right? Now think about that. That's, you know, then times that by 6, because we own Glasgow Shop, Glasgow Shops, Glasgow Shopping, the .co.uk's and the .coms, right? That's that. But then to even make it the linkage even better again, because every time we create a page, there's like 6 or 12 links at the bottom of that page linking back into the Glasgow network that then cross links back into the Glasgow network and increases more linkage right across the board. So this is a bit tedious and I don't think it's been done, but if so we take Buchanan Street, and in Buchanan Street is the subway. There's 2 subway stations, and you've got Enoch subway station and you've got Buchanan Street subway station. So if you click the link for Buchanan Street subway station, that takes you into a page for Glasgow Subway. Now we own glasgowsubway.com, and then there is our subway network. So that's then 13, 14, pages again in that site, and then you can go and click that and end up in the West End, and the West End takes you so it's all interconnected right across the board. And once a person goes on your network, they'll spend maybe an hour or 2 hours getting into other sites. That keeps them there.
What I really love about it, Tommy, is that this is actually a very scalable strategy, right? Because I mean, you could go out and hire a student, or you could go out and hire someone and literally just ask them to, walk down the street and take a picture individually of every single shop on the street or whatever, right? And then, I mean, you can have some very cost-effective labor, just sit and manage those images and name them and upload them and so on, right? So it's actually something that's relatively scalable. At I expect not too high and too crazy a cost, right?
If you think about it, digital camera, right?
Well, everyone have an iPhone or whatever nowadays, right?
Sort of thing, and just walk about going click, 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 and then you turn it. And there's two ways of doing it. There's different ways of doing it, because you take a photograph of that, you've then got the details of it, you put it up online. As you know yourself, man, you can put Google Ads on it, you can put affiliates on it.
Yeah.
So straight away it becomes a good little earner. So with doing that, you're going to get natural organic traffic, and you can build up a hyper local business without the strain of running a massive complex e-commerce site where you need to be on the ball 24 hours a day. So you can do this with, I can walk around the Glasgow city centre within a day, up and down the streets, just going up and down and straight down, click, 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 click. Sometimes it's enjoyable and it's really good for you. You lose a lot of weight when doing it. And I actually done it not just in Glasgow city centre, but I've done it in the outskirts of Glasgow as well. So I've got images of all the different kind of businesses, which is really, really good, sort of thing. And then we decided to take that at a different level as well, because when we started going on holiday, we would look at the holiday locations. And then, I'll give an example. This time last year, we were in Paphos in Cyprus, right? Yeah. And before then, 14 years before that, or 9 years before that, I was doing a conference in Ayia Napa. So when I came back, I bought AyiaNapaHotel.com. And when we went to Paphos, I went to Paphos International. I bought Larnaca International and Limassol Hotel. So we've now got 4 or 5 sites for Cyprus. And that's what I do. We go to the places, we visit the places, we get, we test the food, we have drinks in the place. We'll take all the photographs. Photographs are the stuff that you can't get, because you don't, a bus stop, the local buses, the local taxis. There's a lot of things that you can't get in stock photography. And that's what I like doing is, like taking, if you're in Barcelona, taking pictures of the ticket machines and how do the ticket machines work and stuff, what's the best pass to get. So all that sort of thing enables us to look at a geographical area by the name. Before we were in Cyprus, we went to 3 months before that, we were in Florence and Pisa. And before we went, this is quite funny, before we went, Trisha went like that, have you got any Italian names? I went, no. She went, have you got any Florence names? I went, no. Have you got any Pisa names? I went, no. She went, how many names will we have before we go back? And I went, I don't know. We'll wait and see. So I now own PisaHoliday.com, Florence-holidays.com, and a few. What Italian network now has 9 locations. So we've got our foothold in there. Some of the names are really, really good. We're developing them just now and getting them ready. And that's what I'm talking about, is getting the one jigsaw puzzle and playing that waiting game over a period of months, watching the drops and picking up that drop name, and or even registering the name, because it's amazing the amount of names that are there when you even do a natural search. I picked up hotelssalerno.com, right, for a $10 registration, because no one had it had been registered. Somebody let it drop, and no one had picked it up. So there is doing the searches on, for domain names. There is still very, very nice names to pick up. Done the search on it, discovered it was a 19-year-old domain name, and therefore looked at the history, etc. And that's what I like. That's why I like doing it. And that name, once we go to Salerno, will do well with it, Mads.
And what about, Tommy, then what's your sort of favorite strategy and techniques and hints and tips in terms of getting some of these good domain names? Like, how do you go about doing that normally?
Normally what I do is I look at Google Maps, right? I'll go and look at Google Maps. I'll then go to Wikipedia, check out the population. I'll go to TripAdvisor and other sites, look at the hotel listings, etc. I'll do my research on each location, find out the population, check out how many visitors does that place have a year, because looking at that's how many visitors there, you then turn and say, well, if I build a site on it and if I aim for X amount of a small percentage of that's the market research that I do. So I don't buy a name without just in the sake of buying it. I buy a name because I study the area first, and then I'll look for that name. But the name has always got to be part of a bigger network. It's not just
it's not just one domain, yeah.
It's not just the one name. So if I pick up one name for a geographical area, I'm also thinking, well, who owns that one? Who owns that one? And who owns the other ones that are near it? Because having that hyper local connection is good for advertisers at a hyper local area, because you tend to find that restaurateurs or pub owners, they maybe have a pub here and a pub there, and a restaurateur might be the same. We'll have a restaurant there and a restaurant. So you're aiming at that market, whereupon folk will go there for the day trip, folk will go there for the locality, as long as it's like we own benidormhotel.com, but we also own other areas that are near Benidorm, and so if you look at that, we own Magaluf Hotel. With Magaluf Hotel, we then picked up Santa Ponsa Hotel, which are two areas nearby. Then we picked up one or two other areas for Mallorca. If we take the Gran Canaries, right, we started off with one of the hotels dropped their domain name. I think it was either costadeque.com or misspalmas.com that they let drop, right? And I bought the domain name, had registered the domain name, and we started getting all the traffic coming in for the hotel. So I phoned the hotel up and said, was this a mistake? Did you drop it by mistake? And they went, no, head office told us to drop the domain name because we're now getting a corporate page on the company website. I went, that's madness. So this domain name had been used for 7 years. It had Jet2 bookings, it had airport, we had everything in it. We were getting all the inquiries, right? And so we still have that. We still have Mas Palmas Hotel. From Mas Palmas Hotel, we then bought Costadeque Hotel. For Costadeque Hotel, we now have 13 hotel locations in the Gran Canaries for all the Los Cristianos. Oh God, here we go. That's Playa de la Ingles.
So Tommy, how do you go about finding them? Like, when do you know when they're dropping? And like, because quite a few of the audience are not really aware of like drop catching and all that sort of stuff. So what's sort of the best strategy for figuring out like when a domain is dropping and so on?
The best strategy that I do is I get and check the whois to see when the domain name was registered, right? I'll then look at the domain name and have a look at whether it's going to be a part page, whether it's a part page or whether it's getting used. And I'll just keep an eye on it, Mads, with regards to, as I say, it's the waiting game. It's the strategy. And
but is there any kind of services you use to like notify your domains drop? So
because everybody else is using all these services. If you look at all the drop catch names, GoDaddy Auctions is quite good for picking up certain names. But I like to actually just do the, looking at the whois, looking and searching for the names, and actually get in and just check my luck. I'll give you an example. I picked up, I bought that at auction. I bought at auction, we opened up our second American hotel site. Our first one was St. Augustine Hotel, which is in Florida. Nice area, right? Brilliant tourist place. And our second buy, which was a couple of months ago, was hotelspalmsprings.com. Now, come on, I should never have been able to pick that domain name up. right? But I picked it up for about $30 at the GoDaddy auctions. So there is gems like that if you look at the field. But I also pick up other names where I put in, as I said, that the hotelsalerno.com, that was a hand reg domain name. So I'll look at the who is. I'll even type. I'll look at and see. And sometimes when something doesn't appear on the page, when I type it in directly to the search bar, I'll then go, right, what's up with that name? And then I'll go and check. And sometimes what happens is you discover that whoever had it before let it drop. It's no went into the domain lists or everything else that everybody else is looking at, and it's that sometimes is quite lucky. Most of the domain names that I've registered in the last 5 years, I would say 60% of them has been hand reg. Magaluf Hotel, Santa Ponsa Hotel. I can give you a list of them, and these are names that sell for. I could probably get anything between $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 for. So, I'm quite open with the strategy that I use to get the domain names. Like motorwayhotel.com, that cost me $10. Think about it. That's an industry in itself. So some of the names that I look at with regards to niche market. So here's I'll explain how it works. So if you take maspalmashotel.com that we bought, and this is me now going away in another tangent. On the booking.com feed for Mas Palmas hotels, it came up there was a hotel that was a men only hotel. Right, and I went, oh, that's interesting. Let me have a look at that market. Right, I then discovered doing the market research for that, there was hotels opening up throughout the world for men only. I then looked at the analytics for that and discovered that was another very, very niche market. So we now own those hotel names, and then we looked at the women only. And it's the same in Mallorca. They opened up the first women-only hotel. So again, we hand-registered their names. Now this is where it gets interesting. Looking at that market and reading up about it, we discovered that in the Middle East, the men tend to send their women to women-only hotels for their holidays and breaks. And I didn't know about that, but doing that market research took us into that market. So we now own those names. And then looking at that market, I then hand registered as a domain name, and you will like this, hajhotel.com. Because how many folk go to the Hajj when it's the religious festival? Getting that name, we've started working on that, and obviously hopefully when things get better, we'll use that. And that then goes well with our Middle East websites, because we have Middle East websites, and that it adds into that connectivity, Mads, of converting traffic, etc., and following the trends.
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense to me.
Madness, total madness.
Totally. Very good, Tommy. I think that's been pretty good. I've just been looking through the list. We haven't got a ton of other questions around domains. So we had one like, what's the best place to buy domains? But I mean, I guess any of the registrants works really.
Yeah, you've got the likes of Sedona and other organisations that sell.
Yeah.
After Nick and all the names are all listed for sale, Dan.com and stuff. There's loads of different platforms there where most of the domainers sell their names, sort of thing. And sometimes you can pick up a really good bargain, Yeah.
Excellent.
But build and develop, as you know, and that's what to me that's what it's all about. And then sell.
Excellent. Well, Tommy, that was great, and good chat again, and good talking to you, and definitely for all the audience listening again. Check out Tommy's speech and all the other speakers today. We have lots of fantastic speakers, and don't miss out. Don't miss out. We'll be back again tomorrow around not the same time. Now I need to remember my timetable here. So we'll be back tomorrow at 9 p.m. EST, with another Q&A from tomorrow's speakers. So thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you very much for joining, Tommy.
Thank you, Mads.